It was a hell of a wake up call. But I think at the time it's what I needed. I think I think I embraced it because it gave me something that I didn't really have a lot of. I mean, I guess I did have some structure at home, but this was like a extreme structure. And, and at the time I was able to meet, just going to the Marine Corps boot camp, meeting different people from having different perspectives, different backgrounds. And it was all new, it was novel to me. So I think at the time I was embracing it, and I said, all right, let's do this.
No, never a point, let's say 2-3 weeks into boot camp where you went, oh man, I made the wrong decision.
Well, you know what? I definitely thought about that on the first day. But that first day of boot camp, I was like, oh shoot, what the heck did I get myself into? Like many of us do. And, I said, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just write it out and move forward and see where this takes us.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this.
Let's take it back to when you were a little kid. Where's hometown for you?
Hometown is Whittier, California.
Born and raised?
Born and raised.
Big family, small family?
Kind of like I'd say small family. It's a small family.
Brothers, sisters?
I got two brothers and, two brothers. That's it.
Where do you fall in? Are you the youngest, oldest, middle?
I'm the youngest.
And were you a good kid or a kind of a troublemaker?
Well, I'd like to say I was a good kid, but I was actually, a little bit of a troublemaker at times.
Troublemaker in the sense of just like screwing around, or actually something where it could have gone a completely different direction if it, let's say the coin fell a different way?
I think for the most part, I was a skateboarder. So
skateboarding is not a crime.
Right. Skateboarding is not a crime. So I used to, we used to go skateboard in schools, and, security officers used to chase after us and stuff like that. So that was kind of like the troublemaker part of me. And but for the most part, I was a pretty good guy, pretty good kid, I think, for the most part. I think I wish I would have done a lot of things better, as far as, taking school a lot more seriously when I was in high school. But it took some time and some experiences to really understand that.
Don't we all make that mistake? We get to be adults and realize maybe I should have applied myself a little bit more in high school.
Absolutely.
Or school in general.
Absolutely.
What'd your mom and dad do?
My father was he was a bus driver for, at the time, I think it was called RTD.
Okay.
He was a bus driver, and my mom, she was a CNA, a medical assistant. Disregard that. Yeah, medical assistant. And
growing up, other than skateboarding, interested in sports? Did you play sports at all?
I did a little bit of sports. I wasn't too much of a jock, I guess. I did a little bit of wrestling. I did some football, but I didn't really take it too seriously in high school. I think at that time I was very into skateboarding. I was probably, I thought I was going to go professional. That was my goal.
Oh, okay.
And so I guess skateboarding was the sport, but as far as sports, moderately, not too much.
Was there one single event that kind of was the deciding factor for you not to go pro? Assuming that you didn't eventually make it pro as a skateboarder.
I think when I was in high school, so middle school was great. We were always skateboarding with my friends. And, as we got a little bit older to high school, people started doing their own things. They started drifting off to different groups. And, I found myself skateboarding solo at that time. And then at that time, I just, I guess that momentum that I had to go, get sponsored or become professional, I lost it. And then I got, mixed up, and I got introduced to exercising a lot. I used to like to work out weights. And then
while you were in high school?
While I was in high school.
What brought you to that?
maybe my brothers, maybe had some friends that, were exercising a lot. They started, we tried to compare how much we can bench press and say, hey, you can do, I can max out on the 45s. It's like, what, I was like, let me do that. And then, I actually got pretty strong because I wasn't strong at first, but, as I didn't want to be the weakest one. So I would, exercise. And then before you know it, I was able to push those 45s. So
in the age range or the breakdown of you and your brothers, how much age difference between you and say your oldest brother?
Shoot, I wish that's a good question. We're a good age range away. Let's see, he's in his mid 40s, I believe.
So there was a significant age gap while you were in high school. Your brothers were already quote unquote grown men, adults.
Essentially, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it's not like you were a freshman and they were the seniors in high school.
Right. Yeah, they were. Yeah, my middle brother David, he was, he was out of high school when I was in high school. So,
as a high school student, you said you weren't too into school. Did you have plans at that time though for what you were going to do after high school? No,
my plans were hopefully get sponsored.
So you were still thinking skateboarding?
Yeah, skateboarding was a thing. I didn't really have real plans. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Didn't have like this dream goal or career that I wanted to get into. And I was like, well, just live it one day at a time. Yeah.
At that time, what were your parents kind of pushing for you? Were they talking about college at all?
Did they? I mean, they say, oh, you better go to college kind of thing. And, but no, not to the point where like, cause I think my dad, he had some college. My mom didn't have college. So, it wasn't really, maybe they couldn't really, tell me the process. So I didn't get all that information at that time. But of course it was that like, yeah, you better do college or you should do college.
Yeah. Cause I equate it back to myself. And as a kid growing up, going through high school, my dad never stressed college. It was when you get out of high school, go get a job, and that was the extent of my future planning, so to speak.
Right.
When did the military start becoming a prospect for you?
Well, I think it goes back to childhood. And my father was a Marine. My brother was a Marine. And so I kind of grew up seeing that. I mean, I didn't see them as in the Marine. Well, my brother was a Marine when I saw that. But my dad, he was a Marine back in the day, right in the end of the Vietnam War. But he would always bring it up. I mean, I see his shirts. He would, when I was young, he would sing the Marine Corps hymn to me, and so it was just something that I grew up with, and I just picked it up, and it was just, I was like, oh, I'm not going to go in the Marine Corps. And then once I graduated high school, I went to a junior college. My father and we went to the local community college. I was like, hey, I need a ride to go apply. And then as I was finishing with the admissions and all that, the mission office, I thought to myself, I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I told him I want to join the Marine Corps. And he's like, you what? And then he's like,
you're a skater.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's like, well, let's go to the Marine Corps recruiting office. And then right after that, we went down there, to the office, and I talked to a recruiter, and that's how it started.
When you were a kid growing up, was your dad, did he talk about his time in the Marine Corps fondly? Did he like his time there? Did he talk about it as I don't want to use the word waste of time, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. He talked fondly of the Marine Corps. I don't know if he was too successful in the Marine Corps. He didn't get very far in ranks, but I think, what helped him out is that I think it made him grow up, and he got introduced to a lot of things that he probably wouldn't have. I think, he grew up in East LA and wasn't too much going on at the time. And, I don't think he wasn't going to college right after high school. And so, and I don't think his family, they didn't have a lot of money either. So the Marine Corps was something that he did. And yeah, and I think he just got some good opportunity. He learned some things, and he would tell me some crazy stories about a lot of fights. And I thought that was kind of cool when I was growing up.
He only did 4 years.
Say again.
Him, your dad.
Oh yeah. He only did. I think he did about three years at the time. I think the enlistments were about 3 years. So I think 3 years, 4 years.
So just one enlistment.
Just one enlistment.
And your brother, how long was he in for?
He did 4 years. Yeah, he did 4 years.
So when you were going in, were you thinking just one enlistment and out, and then figure out what you were going to do, or was there ever a point you thought about making it a career?
I just wanted to get in. I said, wherever it takes me, it takes me. I just want to get into the Marine Corps, and if I like it, maybe I'll consider a career at the time. But at the point, I think I just needed to get out of my environment in where I live and get out and do something.
Did you have a duty or an MOS or something in mind that you thought you might want to do when you got in the Marine Corps?
I did. 03, infantry. Yeah.
So you wanted to be infantry?
I did, yeah.
And the Marine Corps accommodates you on that one.
Yeah, at the time, it was around, 2006 when I joined. And so, still the time, stuff was going on in Iraq. And so, it was kind of tough to get into the infantry because a lot of people wanted to join the Marine Corps, and that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to get into infantry. So, surprisingly, I had to...
earn your way in?
I had to earn my way in. I had to, request a few times, hey, I want infantry. I don't want this MOS. I want infantry. And so, yeah, it wasn't easy as maybe it was back in the day.
You said your dad went with you down to the Marine recruiter. Was your mom supportive of you going in the Marine Corps?
Not at all. No. Nah. I graduated when I was 17 years old, and I wanted to go when I was 17 years old, but she refused to sign for me. So once I turned 18 years old, I went back to the recruiting office and I said, hey, let's do this.
Was it more because you were her baby, or because she just didn't think that was the best path for any of her children?
Probably both reasons at the time. And baby was the youngest one. And at the time we had Iraq going on, and I guess she didn't feel comfortable with me going.
Did your brother serve during the first Gulf Wars?
He did, but he didn't. He didn't at all.
So he didn't deploy.
He didn't deploy. I mean, he didn't go overseas at all. I mean, I think he went to Japan, but he didn't deploy to the Middle East.
But when you went in, it was very likely that you were going to be seeing combat.
Oh yeah.
So you're now in the Marine Corps. It's 2006.
About 2006.
How did you find that transition for you, being the skater kid, not really into academics? Now, all of a sudden, a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot of time management. How'd that work for you?
It was a hell of a wake-up call. But I think at the time, it's what I needed. I think I think I embraced it because it gave me something that I didn't really have a lot of. I mean, I guess I did have some structure at home, but this was like a extreme structure. And, and at the time I was able to meet, just going to the Marine Corps boot camp, meeting different people from having different perspectives, different backgrounds. And it was all new, it was novel to me. So I think at the time I was embracing it, and I said, all right, let's do this.
No, never a point, let's say 2-3 weeks into boot camp where you went, oh man, I made the wrong decision.
Well, you know what? I definitely thought about that on the first day. But that first day of boot camp, I was like, oh shoot, what the heck did I get myself into? Like many of us do. And I said, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just write it out and move forward and see where this takes us.
Before going in, did you kind of pick your dad and your brother's brain a lot to kind of get an idea what would happen? Or did you kind of go, you know what, I'm just going to figure this out on my own and see what happens when I get there?
I did pick their brain a little bit. My dad always told me his boot camp stories and how tough it was at that time. And I think they were a little more tougher around the time he went in. So I would ask him questions about his boot camp experience. I would ask my brother. My brother was also infantry, and he was a machine gunner. And so I kind of asked him some questions, but I didn't ask him to the full extent to get a very thorough understanding. I think I just wanted to go in and get my own understanding of it. And because at the time when I would ask people about it, I was, they would say, nah, you shouldn't be doing that. You're going to be going to war. And well, So I just tried to I was like, I'm going to take up the experience and move forward with it and learn it on my own.
Where'd you deploy to?
I went to Iraq.
In what year?
She was at 2007, one deployment 2007, 2008-ish. And then I did another one around 2008-ish to 2009-ish. So two deployments over there.
And once you're deployed, was it, I don't want to say everything you thought it was, but again, was it working for you, or were you, this isn't where I want to be?
Well, I think at that time, when I deployed, I just wanted to make it back home. I said, shoot, I got to make it back home. So, at the time I focused on being there. I did my best to be in the present, and I was around a great group of guys, great group of Marines at the time. And, we were just, we were in it together, embrace the suck.
So you did the 2 deployments. How many enlistments did you do?
Enlistment. So I did one full enlistment as active duty, 4 years, and then got out for about a year after my EAS, end of active service, and did some school. And I thought about it, and I said, I kind of miss the Marine Corps. I really do miss the Marine Corps. It's being around, being on the civilian side is what we call it, and it wasn't the same. It's like the culture's totally different, and so I can either A, try to get back into active duty, or B, maybe I can try the reserves. And the reserves became an opportunity for me.
I've had several guests talk about, especially in the Marine Corps, when you start coming to the end of that enlistment, whatever time it is you're going to get out, you think you want to be out, but then once you're out, you miss it. When you were coming to the end of that enlistment and you were heading to get out, were you looking forward to it? It's like, did you think that, my time here is done? Or was there ever a point where you thought, maybe I'll stay in longer?
Oh, I certainly wanted to stay in longer. My plan was actually to do another enlistment at the time. And girlfriend at the time, I'm sure this is a common story amongst many of us.
Family.
Yeah, family.
Family draws a lot of people out of the military sooner than many of my guests have said they wanted to. Yeah,
that's exactly it. And I wanted to do some cool opportunities, and I think I was just away for too long, because I was stationed in Hawaii, and family's here in California, so I was away for that full 4 years, and so there was a part of me that wanted to stay in and continue to pursue the Marine Corps as a career, and then also come back and see what I can do in the civilian side of life, and with the skills that I've learned, and and see what the civilian side would be like. So I was half and half, and my wife at the time, my girlfriend at the time, she didn't help out with that. She wanted me back home, so I eventually got out at that time.
When you enlisted, were you guys already dating?
Yes.
So she had been with you through your entire enlistment. She had also been, quote unquote, stuck at home while you were deployed. So she definitely had a side of the coin that said, hey, I want you home with your family.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you have any plans for yourself getting out, what you thought you would want to transition into?
Oh, I thought about it when I was in the Marine Corps, and, I was in the infantry, so we did a lot of time in the field, and for some, the infantry guys out there, and, we did a lot of fire watch too, and so when fire watch is, when everybody's sleeping, you're the one up, and you're making sure that, everybody's safe, and you're watching, you're maintaining awareness of what's going on at certain times during the night. And obviously, at times during the night, there's not a lot of going on. So
nothing's going on.
A lot of time to think. And so I would, I was like, what am I going to do? And I was infantry. So I was like, oh, shoot, I can't do much with infantry except for law enforcement. But of course they tell you, you're infantry, you learn all these leadership skills, and you can apply that as a business management and all that kind of stuff. So that was some things too. So of course, law enforcement came up at the time, and, because that was the easy thing to go to. No, I really didn't have too too many ideas of what I wanted to do.
Looking back on it, if you could do it again, would you do a different MOS?
Oh, not at all. No way. No way. No, Marine. Infantry is, when I think of a Marine, my understanding of a Marine is infantry. And so, I feel like it's the only way to go. Yeah, I mean, it's like a foundational MOS for me. From my perspective is it's a foundational, MOS is where you learn your foundation. And then from there, once you get, your infantry background, then you move up to other parts of the Marine Corps, and, you can take on those administrative roles or those nice gigs. But I think, infantry is where you learn the Marine Corps, and that's where I think the true culture comes from.
It's their tagline. It's their motto. Every Marine is a rifleman. And there is something to that core tenet to what the Marine Corps is about that are really, from those that I've spoken to, really seems to get drilled into you, no pun intended. And at the end of the day, that's what the Marine Corps is about.
Yes.
For many in the Marine Corps. Coming towards that transition out, you said you kind of thought maybe law enforcement. It obviously didn't go down that route.
Right.
Did you start picking the brains of anybody and say, start getting some advice about what other options you might be able to do when you got out?
At that time, I talked to a few of my buddies at the time, and, this great thing called the post 9/11 GI Bill came out around the time I got out. That just started, where they were paying for school and then also assisting with housing allowance as well. And so, we're like, if we go to school, we can also find a place to live, near the school. And so started picking the brains of other Marines that were, more smarter than me. And they were like, yeah, we're going to be going to school. And I was like, okay, well, what are you guys doing? And how are you guys doing that? And so I was picking their brain. And then I got the opportunity to take a college class, my first college class, like the last few months of the Marine Corps. I was like, shoot, I might be able to do this. And I think, and I was also exploring different jobs and, salaries that I wanted. You needed a degree, a college degree. There's a lot of employers that say, oh, we'll take military experience. But I think for a salary that I wanted to get, it was, you needed that 4-year degree or, that graduate degree.
When you say you got the opportunity to take your first class while you were still active,
yes,
is that something that the Marine Corps was encouraging, or you just kind of had to make it work within your schedule?
Both of that, to respond to your question. I think the Marine Corps, it just depends on the job. I mean, in the infantry, you got this very busy schedule, not a lot of time for school at all. But, for the guys that are getting out, they get what we call fapped out to different jobs within the Marine Corps, because, essentially the remaining unit is training up for the next deployment. And so the guys that are getting out, I mean, they can go and support that deployment, support the Marines that are getting ready to head out, or they can transfer out to another position. A lot of guys went to MPs at the time. But at the time, I went down to the educational center on base, and I just said, hey, what do you guys do here? And how can you help out transitioning Marines? And there were some people telling me about, man, you have a lot of benefits and resources. And they said, did you know you can use transition assistance, or not transitional, I can't remember what it's called right now, but tuition assistance. And you can take a class here on base. And I said, no, I didn't know that. And they told me I can use about a certain amount of money. I think it was about $3,000 at the time for tuition. I'm not sure. I can't really recall, but there's a good amount of money that you can use. And so I said, okay, well, how do I do it? And they said, here, fill this form out and have your commander sign it. And I said, okay. And I got lucky enough and I got that signed off, and everything worked out. And I did my first class. It was actually humanities. It was something I wasn't used to, but hey, I did it with one of my buddies, and we did it together. So, and we both passed, and It's like, maybe I can do this.
So it was a distance learning type class on base, affiliated with the college?
It was actually, they had, there were schools on the base.
Is this down in San Diego?
No, it was actually in Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah, Hawaii, was it Hawaii Pacific University at the time, and they have classes on base.
And you now transition out. You're back home here in Southern California.
Yes.
Did you keep going to school at that point?
Well, I guess I should, before I get to that point, I actually I got some additional information as we discussed, and from some of my colleagues at the time. And one of my boys, Xander at the time, he said, hey, we could potentially go to school out here in Hawaii and, try out this post 9/11 GI Bill. I said, man, that's a good idea.
Hawaii would be a horrible place to go to college.
Yep. Horrible. And so we made it work, and we put our heads together and said, hey, how do we do this? Who do we talk to? How do we apply for this GI Bill? How can we get this thing set up in a way that it's going to, roll right in? So once we get out, we can get this GI Bill rolling. And we fed off each other, and we actually we found an apartment out in Waikiki. We each got our little apartment, and we were able to go to school full time at the time. And I think we did about 6 months to a year after I EAS from the Marine Corps in Hawaii, and I finished up a few classes to nearly get my associate's degree.
Were you married at this point?
Was I married at that point? No, I wasn't. Was
your girlfriend living with you though in Hawaii?
No. I told her she needs to come. I was trying to bring her down to Hawaii because I wanted to make a life in Hawaii. But she's very close to her family, so she didn't want to go to Hawaii. But now she wants to.
Ask her today.
You should have told me that a while back, but hey, it is what it is.
Well, and where I'm going with that is, so there was obviously the pressure from your girlfriend to get out of the Marine Corps and stop being deployed. But then you get out and stay in Hawaii. I could see her pressuring you to like, hey, you need to come back home.
Right.
The whole point of you getting out was to come home.
Right. My thing with that was, I said, hey, I need to get a degree. I need to get some college going, because if I go back, I need to make a decent wage or a decent income. And she wanted to get, we were going to get married. So she wanted this big wedding and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, hey, I got to do what I got to do. And that helped out. So
at that time, what careers were you looking at? Do you remember?
I was thinking law enforcement. at the time. I think that was primarily it. Law enforcement, and that was pretty much it. And that's all I really wanted to do, because that's all I knew from the Marine Corps.
Now, how soon I know you said you didn't want to get out when you got out, but how soon afterwards did you start looking at, all right, I got to figure out another way to get back into the military? Because I know you said you went the reserves for a little while, but was it immediately? I mean, just as soon as you were out, you're like, I got to get back in?
No, I think I did some time to breathe. I took some time to breathe and really soak in that time out, and live life as a civilian again. And, I wanted to see what my hair looked like if it grew out, and not worry about calling people by their ranks and all that kind of stuff. So I think I took about a good year, and during that year, I kind of thought about it, and I would say, no, you got out for a reason. And and that year passed, and then I got what we call a prior service recruiter that contacted me. He said, hey, you're still on contract for inactive reserves. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, let's talk. So that's how it all happened.
Leading up in that year, were you talking with your girlfriend, now wife, about how you kind of missed it and were thinking about going back in, or did you kind of keep it a secret?
I think I was open about it. I talked a little bit here and there, and I think I just one of the things the Marine Corps ingrained pretty much a lifestyle. The physical fitness part of it, and it was just very, very well a part of me. A lot of the culture of the Marine Corps, it just stood with me, and so it was just an everyday thing that stood with me. And I said, shoot, I talked about it here and there. So I was open with her.
Did she ever change, or you went back into the reserves? So was she supportive on your second time through, or was she only supportive because you were considering the reserves and not full time?
Yeah, she was actually, supportive for the reserves, because I mean, it wasn't a full-time thing. It was a monthly, week in a month, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year thing. So
going back to being a skater while you were in Hawaii, did it transition into being a surfer?
It actually did. It actually did. So I picked up some longboarding, I'm not a shortboarder, but, picked up longboarding and, yeah, I could ride some waves here and there. I'm not as good as I'd like to be, but yes, I did. Yeah.
Have you continued surfing today?
I have actually. I haven't done it recently. Been so busy with, now I got 3 kids.
Life.
So life. And so, and I live about a good 45 minutes away from the beach, which is not too long at all, but.
When there's no traffic in Southern California.
Exactly. Yep.
And the worst part is the traffic leaving the beach in the afternoon.
Yes. So, so here we are, summer, and it's getting warmer, and I'm going to make my way out there soon.
So what year did you get out of active duty?
2010.
And you stayed in Hawaii for about 6 months?
About 6 months.
And then came back stateside?
Yep.
And you went reserves in 2011?
Yes.
And you kind of made it kind of sound like maybe the reserve experience wasn't the best experience. Did I misinterpret that?
You got it. Yeah, I went back into the reserves. We call it the SMCR. And, I guess my understanding of the Marine Corps was all active duty. And then when I went to the SMCR side of the house, my understanding was it was going to be like active duty. And it definitely wasn't like active duty. And so I was like, whoa, what is this? It was a way different experience. A lot of stuff was getting pushed into a weekend. I was like, you know what? I don't know if I can, make this part, if I can make this work. And at the time I was actually continuing school at the time. And I was like, yeah, I think what's more important is me getting this degree. And so I left the reserves for a brief amount of time.
When you say you left, so then is that an option? Can you kind of just choose to when you're going to be in and when you're going to be out? In the reserves that I was in, because I was an inactive reservist, I didn't go in as a contracted reservist. Got it. And so I was just finishing out that inactive reserve contract. So at that time, you can get into a unit, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you can request to drop back to the IRR. And that's what I did. And what were you studying in college?
I studied, when I was in Hawaii, I was studying administration of justice. And then when I got back, went to a 4-year university, and I studied psychology because criminal justice at the time wasn't available. And so I said, all right, let's do psychology.
And when you started taking psychology classes, did your career ideas or career plans start changing?
Yeah, it did. It did because I was taking these classes and I was like, man, I've experienced some of this stuff in the Marine Corps. And I think a lot of stuff I was in denial about. I was like, oh, I think I've experienced that. And so, yeah, definitely. And I started, I started taking interest in different career fields.
When you say that, I'm assuming what you're referring to is the mental health component, the trauma that comes with combat.
Trauma. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For you, how did it manifest itself? What were you seeing in yourself?
I think a lot of I don't know if I guess I kept to myself a lot. I would only focus on communicating and interacting with veterans. Didn't want to have too much interaction with people who weren't veterans. And I distanced myself from family, I think. And I just stuck around with Marines and vets. I felt comfortable with that.
Was it significant enough that your family recognized it and said anything to you, or no one ever said anything?
I mean, I think I've heard some things here and there, but I think what really helped me out was I noticed that I was getting some of these some of these, I guess, symptoms in a sense. And I was like, man, and I started, I knew that alcohol can be an issue if I did drink. And so I said, if I don't want to drink, I don't want to drink too much and have this continue to be an issue. And so one of the things that I did was I minimized any alcohol use. And at the time I was very into exercise, and I still am. And so that's what I did. And I did what made me feel good, which was exercising. I did a lot of running. I did a lot of weightlifting. That was the high that I was getting. That's how I cope with a lot of this, I guess, PTSD symptoms that I was experiencing.
When you mentioned that you didn't want to go down the alcohol route because you knew it could be dangerous, did you already know that you had a propensity to abuse alcohol, or is it just something in general that, hey, I don't want to use alcohol to cope with this?
I think it was kind of like maybe somewhat of a propensity of it, because in the Marine Corps there's somewhat of there is a culture of hey, let's drink and enjoy a beer for it, and that can transfer over into the civilian side, and a coping mechanism could have been alcohol. And I said, no, I can't do that. I can't. It's this is different. We're not back in the military anymore. I'm around family now, so
keep it under control.
Right.
Did you ever get to a point where you actually went and sought professional help?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, not for alcohol, but
for the PTSD and the mental health.
I did, yes.
How long did it take you to kind of cross that bridge?
Took about a good 2 years after I got out of the military. It happened when I was studying psychology. I read it in the books that, counseling can be helpful for some of these symptoms. And I said, And then I remember at the school that I was going to, they offered counseling there. And I made my way over there, and I signed up for it. And I was, at the time, I was like, shoot, I was very, I don't know, how would I say it? I was trying to do it incognito, I didn't want anybody to see me. I was, because, at the time, my understanding of mental health, it was very stigmatized. Now you don't need it, toughen up. And it wasn't for me. I mean, I didn't grow up with my family saying, oh, let's go to, you should go see your psychologist or something like that. So it was very foreign to me at the time. But I said, hey, what's the worst that can happen? And I did it. And I met with the counselor, and she helped me out tremendously.
You hit the nail on the head, is that so much of the barriers that get put up to asking for that help or seeking that help is the stigma of the perception of it. We don't want to be perceived as weak, or we don't want to be perceived as not being able to handle our business, which is the worst thing to put on somebody, because what you've experienced and what its impact has been on you is obviously having effects. And to try to think that you can just ignore it and go away is ridiculous. Did you ever reach out to your dad or your brother about their time and the corresponding mental health component of it?
No, not that I can recall. My dad, I don't know if he would have gave me the best advice. I think he was
old school,
where he would drink it off. And he wasn't a drinker when I was born, he stopped drinking, but he was a big drinker when he was in the Marine Corps. So, but as far as asking my brother, no, I don't remember asking him specifically. And it was just that macho culture,
Your first time going to talk to a counselor, I'll use the word work, or did you kind of find that, hey, that didn't really work for me, I need to go talk to somebody else? Or was it from the get-go, hey, this is beneficial?
Yeah. No, it was at the get-go, I said, this is beneficial. Because, I think at the time it really challenged the way I was thinking. I think I had so many, I developed this thought process in the Marine Corps that was somewhat at the time, some aspects of it could have been toxic. maybe being too hard on myself, or just having some perspectives that, that were having such high standards. And, when I went to this counselor, the counselor challenged some of my thoughts, and they call it Socratic thinking. And I said, I've never thought about it that way, or I've never allowed myself to think about it that way. And that's where I was like, wow, this can be beneficial.
I've heard people say this before, that when their first time starting to talk to a counselor and starting to go down that road of, hey, you need to look inside yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge door to open and be willing to step through it. Did you resist that? Or looking back, when you talked about how the counselor kind of pushed you and made you start thinking about things, did you see the benefit of it immediately, or was there some resistance to really opening yourself up that much?
I think at the time, it was somewhat immediate, in a sense that, I noticed that things started improving. I think, like I said, I was thinking I had changed some of my thought patterns and to more helpful ways of thinking about things, and which alleviated a little of the stress that I was experiencing, and challenged me to maybe take on things that I wasn't doing at the time. And I said, well, maybe I can, this is helpful, and maybe something I can continue to check into.
10 years later, or roughly a little more than 10 years later, are you still talking to a counselor for your own issues?
Every now and then. I'm just so busy with stuff now. I really don't get the opportunity as much as I like, but I do get treatment at the VA too. So whenever they offer some treatments, I'll definitely take advantage of it.
So we talked about how your eyes got opened when you started taking the psychology classes. Today, what's your exact title? I'm sorry.
I'm a licensed clinical social worker now.
Clinical social worker. Uh-huh. How did that career open itself to you?
Well, at the time when I was studying psychology at the time, I was, still considering law enforcement at the time. Wanted to break into the criminal mind, with my psychology stuff. And I was doing some ride-alongs with some of the local police departments. And one of those ride-alongs, we linked up with the social worker. And I said, my understanding of a social worker was from a movie. I don't know if anybody's watched it, but Selena, there was a social worker part in that time. And that's what my understanding of a social worker was. And so anyway, I met this social worker while on this ride along, and I said, hey, what do you do? And what's your role here? And tell me what you do. I'm interested. And the social worker told me what, their roles or duties, and she explained the case that we went out to in a way that I was fascinated with. She gave me this understanding of, wow, I didn't see it that way, because when I went with law enforcement, it was more of like, is there a crime? And but the social worker had this huge perspective, and this, she had this different lens that was different from law enforcement. I said, wow, you're really looking deep inside of it. And that's what really opened me up to social work at the time.
Really kind of digging deep into more about the person than the event or the actions.
Exactly.
And was there any need to change your schooling or your studying when you decided to go down that path as far as a career?
There was. So I got that interest in the social work, and there was a class that was required. One of them was different seminars that I needed. It was like part of the requirements that I needed for the program. And one of them was social work. I can't remember ethics and social work. And that professor at the time, she inspired me. And I said, I'm interested. How do I get into this? And there was another elective that I needed, and she had an intro to social work class, and I took the intro to social work class, and I said, it's over. This is what I want to do.
You already mentioned that you had a different perspective of what a social worker was and what a social worker does. Mm-hmm. Until now that you're doing the job, for somebody who might be interested in or doesn't really know what a social worker does, can you explain the the scope of what you can actually do?
Oh, wow. It's a wide range that social workers can do. We can go all the way from the micro side of the house all the way to the macro side of the house. And what I mean by that is when we go with the micro side, you can do individual, if you want to go the clinical track, you can do individual counseling. You can be a licensed, you can get licensed and provide one-on-one therapy or one-on-one counseling, family counseling, very similar to other professions like MFTs or psychologists. We can do that once you get licensed. You can do case management. You can, so that's the micro side of the house. And then if you move into policy, there's a big policy side of the house where there's a lot of advocates. You can go into management, leadership roles. And, you know, a lot of leaders, I think, social workers make good leaders, I think, because they teach us the biopsychosocial perspective, and it allows us to see the whole person. And I think that's what, as social workers, we use that lens, in our careers, and that's how, there's so much that we can do.
When you first decided to get into it, did you know exactly what component you wanted to focus on, or did that kind of come in time?
I think when I wanted to work with veterans at that time, but I at the time I took up an opportunity, whatever I can get. And so it started off with working with children with autism. I was getting out of the, finishing up school. I got this opportunity to work with children diagnosed with autism. And then from there, I got accepted to grad school. And then we had to do internships at the time. And there was this internship opportunity where they would pay for a year of school if you worked for them for 1 year. And I said, well, shoot, I can use that. I can use a job, and it looks like that's a pretty good job and good way to learn and get back into the swing of things.
Basic entry into being a social worker, does it require a bachelor's degree?
The basics, yes. Yeah, there is you need to have if you want to identify yourself as a social worker, you have to at least have what they call BSW, a Bachelor's of Social Work.
So it's a specific degree program for social work.
Yes.
Where'd you get your bachelor's from?
I got my bachelor's from Azusa Pacific University.
And the company that offered you the internship to help pay towards your grad school, was that a private company or a government entity?
It was a government entity.
And then where'd you end up going to grad school?
I stuck with Azusa Pacific.
Stayed there?
Yeah.
And by going to grad school and getting that portion of your degree, what additional doors does that open for you as far as being a social worker?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, I mean, so if you have the what they call the BSW, it's primarily like case management, that you can stick with. But once you get your master's, the MSW, it opens up so many other doors. That's where you can get onto the clinical side, learn about one-on-one, therapy, family therapy, or that policy side or that management side that you want to get into. And it's social work at a higher level.
And when did you start getting the opportunity to start working with veterans?
Well, I started, when did I see? Well, let me think about that. Back in 2000, I can't recall, 2017-ish, I was working with an organization and I was able to transfer over to the veteran program.
And have you been working with veterans primarily ever since?
I've worked with quite a few different, ever since then, but yes, I have. I've done I've worked in with different populations. My heart's with vets, with the vet population.
From your experience, because you've got the unique experience of coming to counseling, realizing it, going through it, and now you're giving back and working with them. What are you finding is the biggest barrier to getting them to you? Is it still more the stigma, or is it just a lack of access to care?
I would say there's a little bit of both to that. There's still some stigma into it, but I think stigma is definitely decreasing, I think. And And then access to care can be kind of confusing on how to get care. Like someone like myself, if you didn't grow up into that, a family that pushed psychotherapy or mental health therapy, I mean, how do you get it? Maybe at that time, I mean, maybe they just know go to a priest and do some confession. So yeah, I think a little bit of both. I think some stigma is still there, but that's definitely improving. And as far as access to care, it's getting easier, but it's just a matter of finding the right person. And there's a big veteran population. We want to what our own. And so once you talk to another veteran and you ask them, hey, how'd you do that? Or, what steps did you take? Other veterans are willing to share, and you just take that information and go forward.
What would you say from your experiences, the percentage of veterans that are experiencing issues related to their mental health, but they're not acknowledging it?
Shoot. Well, I don't have any stats I can really pull off the top of my head, but I'll tell you, it's a very big amount. It's a very large amount of the veterans that are not acknowledging it. And it's tremendous out there. Yeah.
How quickly would you, using yourself as an example, kind of negates this? If you were to do it all over again, would you go start talking to a counselor as soon as you got out of the Marine Corps?
I think if I needed to, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't hurt. It definitely wouldn't hurt because, I like it. I liked it. Maybe I would. And I'll tell you why, because you're talking to someone who's objective and who's trained on how to ask questions, ask good questions. They really aren't trying to put their own spin onto it, or they're not trying to influence you in a certain way. It's very objective when you're talking to a counselor, and you're able to really use them as a sounding board in a way, and like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And they can repeat that back to you, and you're like, oh, wait, that doesn't sound too great. So yeah, I would definitely, at the time, I would definitely recommend that.
If somebody's interested in wanting to start talking to somebody, where's the best avenue to onboard that? Is it through the VA or is it through a private organization? And obviously that's based on your opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely on the veteran's opinion.
No, I mean, in the sense, what's your opinion as to what's the best avenue for them to start going down that road of counseling?
I think as far as like accessing care, like right when they get out, or
just in general,
in general, I think, they can always talk to their primary care provider, and then inquire about it and say, hey, what are the options? Some people don't want to go through the primary care side of the house and go through managed care, and they want to do it on their own, and they can go on the internet and search up psychotherapists online and find out what their preference is, and do they want to talk with the male or do they want to talk with the female with a certain cultural background, pay out of pocket. A lot of people don't want to use insurance, so they rather just pay cash. And so it's really up to preference at the time and what's going to be the best suit for that person.
Do you find that the ones who want to pay for it privately or not going through their insurance are still trying to keep they're talking to somebody a secret? Is that why they're usually paying for it out of pocket?
It certainly is a possibility. It certainly is a possibility because if you're talking to someone private, they got their different confidentiality rules. It's not managed care. It's not getting monitored, and not monitored, but in a sense, it's not going through, like a different platform, where your primary care provider can see it and all that. And if someone wants to request medical records, they're not going to be, going through that, the agency or organization. So yeah, it's definitely possible someone may be a little more secretive.
With most entities providing the service, you mentioned previously that somebody may want to talk to a male, or somebody may want to talk to a female, or somebody may want to talk to somebody with the same racial background. Does everybody pretty much have that opportunity to be that selective, or is it, hey, here's who you're going to go talk to?
Both. Both. It definitely, if you're going private side, then you probably can be a little more selective on who you want to choose. You can definitely see their background or ask them about their background. Versus if you're going through an organization, they might have a limited amount of clinicians available. So they might give you the one that's available. Or you can make your preference and they'll do the best to accommodate you, and you can give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, you can always request another one. But if you don't like it, then you're just going to have to wait until you get someone that you do like. And so that can be a challenge.
But at the same token, if you do just simply get assigned to a counselor and you're not connecting with them, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I want to try somebody different.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, we're training that in grad school. Not everybody has to like you, or they're not going to be able to feel a connection with you, and that's okay. And we're okay with that too, and we want the best for our clients and for, the people that we serve. So all they got to do is just communicate it, and no hard feelings.
What are your long-term goals with this? What are you hoping to accomplish as far as your career?
I think just continuing to do the same thing that I'm doing is continuing to serve the veteran population, help others, and create awareness, and take live one day at a time. And I'd like to eventually move up into a role where I can maybe influence some things on as far as like how veterans are, different veteran programs for veterans, or how veterans maybe somehow decreasing stigma and increasing that access to care to the veteran population.
What do you think is how do we get rid of that stigma? Do you think it'll ever go away, or is it slowly going away?
I think it's slowly going away. I think the way that we can, potentially continue to go that way is having people come out and actually talk about their experiences. We have leaders. If we have leaders, they can talk about their experiences and normalize it, because the younger population is going to see that and like, oh, he went through that too, or she went through that too, and he went through that, he got that service, and it's okay if I do it too. And so I think if leadership continues to be open about it, and I think that we're going to continue to decrease that stigma of mental health.
Where would you like to see, or if you could make any change today to aid veterans, what would be the first thing you would change?
To aid veterans. Or to aid veterans, I would increase funding, increase funding for resources out there and services, increase access to care. Sometimes services can be a little bit further out, hard to reach. But if we continue to put more organizations in the community for veterans to see that are aimed towards that veteran population, more veterans are more likely to, get those resources. So increase funding for different services, different agencies that can help veterans.
Did you go through the TAPS program?
I did.
Was talking to a counselor a component of that?
Not that I can recall. I'm sure it was, but maybe at the time I can't recall.
It was offered, you just didn't take advantage of it?
It might have been, it wasn't emphasized, I'll tell you that, if it was. It definitely wasn't. It was more of, here's some benefits you can tap into, or, different agencies that came up that wanted to hire vets that I can recall. And yeah, but as far as saying, hey, you can get individual counseling, maybe they did, but I can't recall it right now.
Do you think that most would be open to it if it was mandatory? Or do you think they would do the absolute minimum just to check the box and get out of there?
You know what? I think it's, you might get both. You might get both of that because, some might be open to it because it gives them that opportunity, and then some might, say, I don't need this, or, they might have that stigma towards it, or, they might, and not everybody has, any issues and mental health issues to address. So maybe they might not need it. So, I can see it going both ways.
I just wonder if it's something where somebody doesn't realize it at the time. And so maybe being forced into talking to somebody exposes them to, like you said, the person who's going to ask that right question and open that door. And all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
if you go in and you talk to somebody and you're like, hey, I'm good to go, I'm not having any issues, then you just move on. But I do think that if there was a way maybe of making it mandatory, I do think it might open a few more veterans up to the importance of counseling.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
Any last piece of advice that you would have for transitioning veteran or from your experience as a social worker dealing with veterans?
I guess for the last piece of advice I would say for vets and transitioning service members is, live one day at a time, have goals, set a routine. The main thing is, in the Marine Corps and the military, you got this established routine, and then once you get to the civilian side of the house, and you gotta get your own routine going. So try to get into the routine, get back into the gym if you're able to exercise still, or, do something that you like, and continue networking and take opportunities too, because you never know where they're going to take you, or you'll never know who you're going to meet, and just take up those opportunities.
I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.